Social Security beneficiaries have been assured that their monthly checks will continue to arrive. Joining us to discuss is Anthony Esposito, CEO of AscalonVI Capital. Good afternoon to you, Anthony. I want to start off with this. What makes these payments, Social Security payments, safe even during a government shutdown? And what if it's a prolonged one?
Yeah, so the payments, thank you so much for having me. The payments are safe here because they're funded through the Social Security Trust Fund. We make those payments personally as citizens working in the country. Every time we get paid, we're making a payment to that fund. That fund in return is paying out to the recipients of Social Security. And as you move along, there should be money left in the fund, ideally, for those of us that are paying today. So we don't need appropriations. We don't need anything from Congress at this point. The fund is liquid, and the fund is making payments and will continue to do so, even if the government shutdown continues for the foreseeable future.
But we're seeing furloughs on the Social Security Administration's workforce, right? Is there going to be impact of that?
Yeah, so they have about, the last number I heard was just over 6,000 employees of Social Security have been furloughed. So with that, there will be a decrease in service, right? Advancing cases, complaints, moving forward on adjustments, or things of that nature. The payments will continue to go out. The service, the level of service that you'll see from Social Security will definitely decrease because there's much less people working there. And that, again, is a reason that we should be coming to the table and getting this CR passed so that we can reopen the government, get to a better place as services are restored to the United States citizens.
And can you speak to what is the current financial health of the Social Security Trust funds? Is there any circumstance where the payments could actually be disrupted?
Currently, no. The payments look solid. From everything that I see and everyone I've spoken to, the payments look solid. And the shutdown right now, there's no expectation that payments will be disrupted at any time during this shutdown. I don't see any possibility personally that we go long enough where there is a real disruption of payments.
Okay, so are the funds enough to last, well into the future? Do Americans need to worry about their payments getting smaller?
No, not in the foreseeable future. I think the first time that there was a shutdown of the government under Trump was his first term. We went for 35 days. There was a minimal hit to GDP at that point in economic activity. The stock market was actually up 10%. We came through just fine, and there was no pause in Social Security payments at that time. I would expect that we're running through the same playbook this time on all counts, in particular Social Security payments.
Okay, in general, how is the funding of Social Security being done? For example, how does factors like aging population and workforce participation rates influence the funding?
Yeah, that's definitely a broader question and a longer term question. Whether the fund is healthy longer term, whether we have enough contribution from the working people to pay those that have retired and are eligible for Social Security, and quite honestly, whether we are making payments from the Social Security fund to legal American citizens and not misappropriating those funds are all great questions. As we move forward, as we have workplace participation shrinking from previous generations and an aging population as far as the baby boomers and those that are taking from the fund, we are in a position where we need to make sure that we continue to fund this properly, and there are adjustments that are going to need to be made. Will that take place or be a part of this shutdown and this conversation? No. Moving forward, yes, there's definitely a concern that we will have enough in the fund to be liquid and to continue the process of Social Security payments for those that are eligible once they retire.
Okay, Anthony, and there's another thing on my mind because we did see the delay of the release of the Consumer Price Index, right, a bit earlier during this shutdown. Is that going to impact the calculation of the 2026 cost of living adjustment?
I think that first of all, from an investment point of view, most larger funds, hedge funds, money managers have their own models and are moving through their investment process based on those models, and they essentially look at the government report for a final number. Those final numbers, let's be honest, have been way off. The BLS, for example, has been disastrous over the past few years. So, will it have an effect on inflation? We will catch up. Once we reopen and those numbers start to get issued, we're going to get to the same place anyway. The market is clearly not overly concerned with the fact that we're not getting those numbers now. The data is still available, and it's not going to have a major impact on where inflation ultimately ends up. Most people, most private models, I would go out on a limb from experience and say that most private models are actually more accurate than the actual government numbers. We're just looking for an official number from the government, which hopefully is accurate. But a delay in those numbers, I don't think there's an anyone should be overly concerned with the fact that those numbers are going to be delayed. They will come in. The data will come in. It will all catch up and fill in the gaps.
Okay, long-term wise, are there any solutions to ensure Social Security's sustainability? Because we have heard lawmakers talking about the funds potentially being depleted at a certain time.
There's been a few different items, right? The first one is, are we spending the money properly, the money that's in the fund? And then the second one is, you have inputs and outputs, right? So is the money being spent properly and appropriately? And then the second one is, how do we generate more revenue in the fund for the fund so that we have more to move on? There has been some talk, and I think President Trump has actually mentioned it in the past, of actually using some investment tools within the Social Security fund to grow with inflation, keep pace, and have enough there, or help have more of a liquid fund moving forward. So I think that we can look at potentially using some of that money to invest, or at least be in solid kind of inflationary investments where we're keeping pace. And then we have to obviously look at who is working and who's paying into the fund. Are the people that are working in this country paying their fair share into Social Security? And that includes the mass amount of jobs that were given to non-native born Americans over the Biden administration. What type of money is being paid by them into Social Security? It's not as much as it should be. And how do we address that issue?
Okay, Anthony, just one last question here on the government shutdown. Do you think it's going to cost the government more money or less in the long run for this shutdown? Because President Trump is talking about layoffs, right? So speaking in terms of, is this going to save money, or is this going to cost more once this shutdown is over?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the short answer is, this will benefit the U.S. government and the cost. The Democrats have put themselves in a corner. They've painted themselves in a corner, and they've actually, once again, in a great way, given the ball over to President Trump and the administration. The bottom line is this: there is a massive amount of fraud, waste, and abuse within the government. And by not negotiating, or at least voting on a continuing resolution and putting the shutdown in place, they've actually given the administration and Mr. Vogt the ability to move forward and trim fat that they might not have otherwise been able to trim. It is within their right to do so, but they've actually given a path to do that. It is really a case, again, and everyone says it, and I think it's very true, where President Trump is playing 5D chess and everyone else is playing checkers. So ultimately, I actually like the fact that we're shut down right now, not because of the pain that it's causing anyone on the table. I'm not for that. I'm not happy about that. I do think in the longer term, as we run a massive $2 trillion deficit in this country, we have $37 trillion in debt. Something needs to change. We need to fix all aspects of budget. This is actually going to give an opportunity to trim down costs, to trim fat, so that moving forward, we're actually trimming that deficit through this shutdown. So some shorter term pain here for sure, but I do see a path here where it is worthwhile, this shutdown, and it actually becomes a benefit for America to kind of trim that fat, trim that spending, get that deficit lower, and then come out and move on.
Okay, Anthony, well said. Good to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.